Me too.
Well, clearly,
Yeah.
that was a good group. All right. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, March 14th, 2024. We're in Trade and Transit 2. Please rise for the invocation, followed by the flag salute. Lord, grant us the wisdom to see common ground, bridging divides that separate us. May we open our hearts and minds to truly understand the facts, disconcerting truth from falsehood. Help us cultivate empathy, seeing beyond differences to recognize the humanity in each other. Guide our words and actions so that we may treat others with the dignity and respect they deserve. May our interactions be filled with compassion, fostering unity and harmony in our shared journey. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move to item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from February 29th, 2024. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the meeting minutes? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on item 3.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no request tonight. We'll do item 5, appointments. We've got 2 proposed appointments. Nancy Eichscheid, I think I pronounced. Eichscheid, thank you. For a 5-year term commencing today, ending January of 2029. And Sid First to the Brandon Park Shade Tree Commission for a 1-year term commencing today and ending in January of next year. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter.
Yes, good evening, President Yoder, members of the council administration. What you have before you for your consideration of appointment is Nancy Eichscheid to the Water and Sanitary Authorities Board. Nancy was a longtime employee of the chamber, recently retired not too long ago, still very active in our community and has shown interest in joining the board, and I've spoken with the board, and they're very excited to have her pending, of course, city council approval. She was on finance committee on Tuesday, had a conversation with her. She's unable to be here tonight, but I think we can review finance. So this was reviewed in finance.
Thank you very much. And Sid First is here for the Brandon Park Shade Tree Commission. We'll do these both together, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Mealy for finance and the conversation.
Yeah, we did have a brief discussion with Nancy on Tuesday in the finance committee. She's really eminently qualified to serve on the Water Authority Board due to her background in finance and business and specifically working with the chamber. Quite familiar with the territory. And she said apparently she was approached quite a while ago to serve on the Water Authority Board, but due to her position on the chamber, it felt like there might be a level of conflict there. And then got approached again as soon as she left the chamber. So I think I can also say with some certainty that the Water Authority is eager to have her leadership as well. I know I've heard that from several folks at the Water Authority. And so that's obviously a happy thing when she's interested in serving, the authority's interested in having her. And obviously she seems to be a perfect candidate as well. So I will feel perfectly comfortable voting for her this evening. And I think I also speak for Randy, but I can let him speak for himself.
I think you covered it. I would just ditto.
No, that's great. We have Sid in front of us as well from the Shade Tree Commission. We'll knock both of these out together.
Sid did not make it to the finance committee.
That's all right. Sid, I'll offer the podium to you if there's anything you would like to say, anything that's perfectly fine. If not, does anybody have any questions for Sid? as he's here. I mean, I can say I know him. I think he's going to be a great addition. Feel very comfortable with his appointment to the Shade Tree Commission specifically. But if others have questions, by all means, feel free to ask away.
I don't have any questions, but having known Sid for some time now and his involvement with the community garden by UPMC and his dedication to our city. He's also eminently qualified to serve on the Brandon Park Shade Tree Commission. And I know the people on the commission are excited to have him as well, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Pelisi.
I just would also like to add, being fortunate enough to live in the same neighborhood as Mr. First. I'm never have him too far away when I have questions about any kind of plant life. So I'm pretty fortunate. There have been, no joke, times where Sid and I have walked around the neighborhood just examining different vegetation. He's been able to identify it all to me when I have questions. So it's going to be very helpful. I think he's going to be a great addition.
Excellent. Any other, Ms. Mealy?
I'm also excited to have Sid on the Brandon Park Shade Tree Commission duo. And I think that's in large part because we have a number of excellent people serving on those two kind of twinned commissions. But I felt for years as though most of the people we've appointed have had a specific interest in Brandon Park and less of an interest in shade trees. And Sid, I think, is the first person who will kind of flip that dynamic as a master gardener and as someone specifically very interested in growing things in the city. I'm exceptionally excited to have a shade tree advocate on the Shade Tree Commission, right, Sid? All right. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. We appreciate your willingness to serve, and we're excited to have a new voice and a different perspective on those commissions, I think. Thanks.
Here, here. Any other final questions or comments? Just thank both of them for stepping up in advance and thank them for their service. Excited to get them on board. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Thank you both, Mayor Slaughter. Thank you. We're going to jump around here just a little bit. We have a few people joining us for some support. We'll move to item 7.
Okay. Resolution authorizing execution of agreement between Dewberry and City for Willow Street subsurface.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mayor Slaughter and Mr. Scott.
Yes, good evening again, President Yoder, members of council administration. What you have before you is a resolution for Willow Street subsurface utility exploration. This is with Dewberry engineers. As we all know, we've had grants for Willow Street for some time now. We do have a contract with Dewberry, and as they started some design engineering, talking with PennDOT and other folks and utilities, they realized that it was probably best to actually do a full scope subsurface utility exploration prior to, so we know where what utilities are where. And so on the technical aspect, we have Dewberry's on via Zoom, and of course we have Bill Scott, our city engineer, here as well, and this was reviewed in finance.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Ms. Mealy, Finance?
Yes, this was reviewed in finance and I don't think Randy didn't have a lot of concerns about the item, but I had several questions, many of which Mayor Slaughter answered in the course of the finance meeting, but there were still a couple that were hanging around. So just to be, I guess the history of this that we excavated in the finance committee, and then a little further information that I learned today. The original cost estimates for the grant that we received, the $1 million grant that we received to redesign Willow Street as a pedestrian walkway effectively, while also maintaining its vehicular accessibility, were done in 2017, 2018. And as we're all well aware, costs have kind of skyrocketed in the interim. We initially brought, the contract that we executed with Dewberry for the engineering and design of the walkway, which runs about 4 blocks from Basin Street to Market is the project area. Contract we executed for Dewberry was executed in January of 2021 for a total amount of $169,000 just for the design and engineering. And now this second contract will be for an additional 56, meaning that we will have expended about 225,000 of that million on design and engineering services, leaving us 775 for construction. I didn't get a sense, and part of what I was curious about, Mr. Scott, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, is where is Dewberry at with this project? I was a little surprised that 3 years after we let the original contract with them, they just figured out that there was a utility issue underground.
And they're on, and I did forward
Got it.
those questions to them, so
Okay.
they're prepared, so they are online.
Got it. So I guess, so
They're all-
I'll address Dewberry. I'm sorry, I'm not sure whether I should be looking at Bill or looking at the blank screen. But,
Michael, you're on, correct?
Yeah, yep, I'm here.
hi, Michael, thank you.
Hi.
So I guess, can you tell me a little bit about what's happened so far on the project, where we're at with the design and engineering elements of the project?
Yes.
okay.
Oh, sorry. Yes, so the design elements are still in a very preliminary stage. What ended up happening was the grant was calling for a number of green architecture to be put along Willow Street. However, based on the right of way and what we would need to have Willow Street be ADA accessible, but also act as a shared use trail, being able to be used by vehicles as well as pedestrians. It didn't really allow the room for any kind of green infrastructure along that. One of the main issues that we were running into is any kind of green infrastructure was going to mess with plowing of Willow Street. So any kind of excess curbs or bollards or anything like that that would give that we could put any kind of plantings or anything in, we wouldn't be able to do. So we had to go back to the drawing board with our design and look at, especially for stormwater management, look at a more qualitative approach rather than a quantitative approach. We had to scale some of the designs back. So the original design was to look at a kind of like a trench drain down the center of Willow Street to collect the water. However, by lowering the profile and putting a dip in the center, that was going to most likely end up affecting some of the utilities. And that's where we started getting into, okay, where are the utilities? We got a basic layout of where the utilities are, and they're all going down Willow Street. So seeing that there could potentially be an issue with utility conflicts, that's where we decided that we would need a full SUE investigation to be done.
So basically, currently, we haven't made no real progress on the design element of Willow Street in terms of coming up with a feasible option.
Correct.
Okay. And if I think what I'd initially heard talked about when we were looking at this was the idea of like permeable paving or something like that running down Willow Street. And
Yeah.
that's what you're telling me is not possible given the right of way? Or is it more like green space / like water retention areas?
The permeable pavers is not going to be an option based on the utilities. So if we were going to put permeable pavers, that was going to be down the center of Willow Street with an inverted crown.
So that was the
And-
trench drain. Got it.
Yeah, yes,
Okay. And so the trench drain also we know isn't possible because of the utilities?
correct.
Okay.
Another issue with both of those is that there is really no existing drainage along Willow Street as it is. So in order to outlet any of that water, we would have to connect to either 4th Street or 3rd Street, which would go outside of the project boundaries right now.
Got it. And why are we specifically focusing on stormwater as the green infrastructure element on Willow? I only ask that because the city doesn't actually, in terms of meeting our stormwater requirements, they don't really apply in that specific area because we have a combined sewer system in that part of the city. Right, Wendy? Yeah. So in terms of us, I mean, I guess in terms of it being like a best management practice that might help us with some sort of eligibility for stormwater offset or something, it doesn't function that way for us. Is there any other element of green architecture that we could seek to incorporate instead?
No, there's really no room along Willow Street to incorporate any of that. From a stormwater standpoint, I believe the grant was looking at it more as a water quality treatment rather than a volume treatment.
Okay. Okay, got it. Got it. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying. This is the first time I think we've heard anything about this project since 21. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where we're at in terms
Yeah,
of
of course.
development on it. And it sounds like what you're telling me right now is that meeting the requirements of the grant funding that we receive for this project are not currently feasible as far as the investigations that you've conducted so far?
Yes, to meet the letter of the grant, we're not going to be able to meet it 100%. We discussed this with PennDOT, and they are agreeable to the ideas that we put forth to do our designs for Willow Street, letting them know the issues that we're running into versus what the grant was proposing.
Okay. And PennDOT was the granting agency. I don't remember honestly where the grant came from.
Yeah.
It was a TAP grant?
TASA grant,
Okay.
Transportation Alternatives Step Aside Grant.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And I think so, correct me if I'm wrong, we were looking at obviously the streetscape on Willow and then lighting, and those were the only two elements of the design, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. And so knowing the utilities will enable us to figure out, I guess you're telling me currently we have no good options. The hope is that by spending more money to figure out where the utilities are, we'll figure out an option?
We have options right now, but we need to know the exact locations of the utilities to determine whether we can push either of those options forward.
Got it. Okay. And do we have a timeline to finish up the work on the utility investigations and then finish up the engineering? I mean, I know, given that we don't currently have any good options in mind, that will not be a firm timeline, but do we have any idea when we might be done?
For the utilities, we have a company already slated and ready to go. So once the funding comes in for that, they should be able to get out there relatively soon to get that finished. And then once that information comes, we'll have a better idea as to how long the design will take.
Got it. Okay. And we anticipate this being the last expenditure before we have design docs in hand, right?
I can't say for certain. We obviously hope that we can get the project finished within the remaining budget, but we need to see what the SUE brings back and go off of there. But we are of course trying to keep it within the original budget, and we would not like to have any additional change orders if we don't have to.
Okay. I mean, additional change orders, what would those be anticipated as? I guess I'm not really sure what sort of findings would come back that would necessitate additional work.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I can't say for certain that nothing is going to keep that from happening.
Okay. Got it. And then, I think the mayor answered this question, but I still have the note. So just in case, this contract, the 169,000 does not include any kind of construction administration for the project.
It does actually. It
Okay.
includes 40
Awesome.
hours of.
Construction admin.
Yep.
Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, I mean, everything down there is kind of intimately tied to one another. And so I understand that but in some ways it seems like sometimes the entire project then winds up at a standstill because we're not moving on something or another. So I'm just, the issue that the city has routinely, Michael, and I'm sure you understand it because I'm sure you've seen it elsewhere, is that we receive a grant and by the time we expend the grant is no longer sufficient to cover the cost of the thing we received the grant for. So I don't know, Mayor Slaughter, to what extent it might be possible for us to do outreach. I know that technically speaking, the Willow Street intersection there at Market, where it does fully cross Market, is not considered to be an intersection by PennDOT, because it's not a signalized intersection, but yeah, I know. I've been given to understand that. But I do think that the one, there are a handful of other elements that might combine to create the possible application for another grant related to this project that would give us enough money to complete the project. I guess that's what I'm getting at. One of those would be tying in the rest of Willow Street via a crosswalk that creates a truly accessible pedestrian corridor all the way into downtown and then out to the East Third area. I think that becomes then an excellent argument for also putting more money into a pedestrian friendly space that runs down Willow. And I think that we have the potential to leverage a significant amount of investment by people with properties bordering Willow Street. John Ryan's already put quite a bit of money into a piece of property there. Lycoming College and their private partner will be putting money as well into that corridor area. So the funds that we stand to leverage, I think would also make a passable argument for additional funding. I'm just concerned that by the time we get these designs, we won't have the money to do the project, and that'll be,
Well, I'm sorry, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the grant money is only for construction services.
That was not my understanding, but that would add an interesting wrinkle. Where are we getting this money from?
Yeah, this was, I think this is FCFP's portion,
Okay,
which they were okay with.
Got
They
it,
told,
got it.
we already
Okay.
checked with Betty. Yeah.
that was the one thing. It didn't occur to me to ask in the finance committee review.
Yeah.
So we will still have $1 million, and this is coming out of other funding that we've received for. But I think nonetheless, my understanding is that the $1 million is not likely to do the job, especially if we're looking at some complex utility work and a limited right of way. Unless, of course, the job is significantly reduced by the scope of the work that we can do. But that's good to know. Thank you, Michael. I apologize for not being aware of that. Okay, I think that's all those were all the questions that I had. I was just kind of not sure where the project was, and it didn't seem like there was general certainty there. So I figured we might as well sort it out. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions on the item?
Just
Mr. Helson?
Just one, it just, and this isn't anybody's particular fault. It just seems like this section of that whole development, we kind of had the cart before the horse. Because I think some of these things, and we're going back several years now, should have been researched first before we got the grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we would have an idea. It's like we're in the discovery phase now. I think things got flip-flopped there, or maybe it slipped through the cracks because it may have been considered just, well, that's just an alley, basically.
Right. How hard is it to make an alley?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How tough is this gonna be? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's our conundrum at this point, but we'll just have to work through it.
Yeah, and with PennDOT being involved, to Councilwoman Muley's point, we can check with Market since PennDOT obviously is already involved with the project anyway.
Yeah.
See if additional.
I got, Chris Kaiser reached out to me this morning and said that PennDOT had rejected the idea of a crosswalk there, but
Yeah.
I think PennDOT has also transitioned a little bit in the intervening couple of years, like
Yeah.
our sector of PennDOT. So I think there's possibility for movement there.
Yeah.
They have been open, Mayor Slaughter, you said, to the crosswalk at Washington Boulevard. That's
Mhm.
also not a signalized intersection.
Right.
And it seems as though if they have $1 million in creating a pedestrian alley. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems as though if they have $1 million invested in creating a pedestrian walkway there, they probably would be interested in having the pedestrians be able to go somewhere when they got to Market Street. So hopefully. Because that would, I think, to me, that would kind of be the capper on the whole thing, because it would really allow a flow of people that otherwise it doesn't permit. So, but anyway, I would agree with you, Randy, that it would have been nice to know what the possibilities of turning it into a green alley, but I am excited at the prospect, I think, of a predominantly pedestrian space downtown.
Right.
And this has the possibility to create that for us. So I continue to be excited about the Willow Street project, whatever form it takes. And if it can't take what's considered by PennDOT to be a green format, then I hope we can get approval for some other investment in that area that makes it at least pedestrian friendly, because that in itself to me is a relatively green activity. So thanks.
Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 7, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. We'll jump down to item 13.
Resolution to appoint certified officer for community development.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. I will turn the podium over to Skip. Wish you a good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, President Yoder, members of City Council. Community and Economic Development is presenting a resolution to appoint the city engineer, Bill Scott, as the certifying officer for environmental matters as they relate to the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Program, the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development funded projects. The certifying officer will assure that all environmental, procedural, and record requirements are fully and properly satisfied. This position was filled by John Sander previously as the city engineer. This requirement is contained in the policy and procedure documents as supplied by CEDACOG to keep the city in compliance with housing and urban development. This was reviewed by Austin Scott. It was not at any, Austin White, excuse me. I'm changing your name, Austin. I apologize. And then Jamie Schroeder is available on the Zoom link to answer any technical questions. This is just a procedural issue that we're dealing with since that John has left the city for other employment.
All right, thank you, Skip. This did not go to a committee. Are there any comments or questions from members? Pretty straightforward, but. Okay. Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on item 13.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 14.
Resolution to authorize installation of a directional sign within the city's right-of-way and grant.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Welcome Mr. Nar up. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder and members of council. What I present to you is a resolution. The city is requesting a resolution between FamFest 16 Maynard Common LLC owner of the property located at 106 Maynard Street, which is the Wawa project. What they're requesting to do is locating a Florida style directional sign and related electrical facilities and apparatuses within the city's right of way at the southern area of 104 Maynard Street. This was reviewed by Austin, and rather than going before an easement process, he thought it was more prudent to have a resolution done that way. There's no discrepancies later down the road as far as them obtaining that property based off of easement or having that as become as an issue. So it was reviewed by Austin. It did go through finance. What they are requesting to do is, again, at the southern portion, it's the light there right below, well, above sheets and below Penn College. And what they're doing is it's a directional sign to show that, hey, this is the entrance, one of the entrances into Wawa.
This went to finance.
This did go to finance, and while we had a handful of questions, I think they all were perfectly well satisfied. Obviously, we would have the right to remove the sign if it were damaged, even if the permit had not yet expired. We would, if it were significantly damaged and the company were not keeping it up. We're not responsible for damage to the sign. Anyway, this does seem like the cleanest way to do this and to make certain that the sign stays in good repair and that we have a continued oversight. We had no issues with this.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on item 14.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. We'll move to item 15. We have a subdivision for Williamsport Area School District on West Third Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
What we present to you is Williamsport Area School District is requesting to create a one-lot subdivision. One of the parcels, lot number 1 will contain 2.3 acres. Lot number 2 will contain 2.678 acres. They will both have access off of Third Street. There are currently commercial structures on them. There is an easement that goes through that is tied into and will be deeded as such. This was reviewed by both city planning, county planning, as well as Eric Smith, the Stormwater Authority. And I can answer any questions.
Any comments or questions for members? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 15.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. We'll move to item 16, certificate of appropriateness for 425 Market Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
What we have is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for a signage from Becca Beauty Company. It will be located at 427 Market Street. It is within the central business district. It does meet the zoning requirements. The sign will be a 4x8 foot acrylic, but we'll have black acrylic with white channel letterings on that. That will be attached to the building. You do have an image of what it is as well as what it is, the material will be made of. And I can answer any questions.
Any comments or questions on item 16? Okay, here you can see none, Mrs. Frank on item 16.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. We will go back through regular order at this point. Item 6, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance MS4 stormwater update and final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Welcome back, Mr. Scott.
Good evening, members of council, Mayor Slaughter. To recall the last council meeting, you had a red line markup of the stormwater draft ordinance in front of you. Just to refresh, U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is requiring all municipalities to update their stormwater ordinance to be consistent with the model ordinance that was developed by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for municipal separate storm sewer systems. EMS4. I've been working with colleagues at the Sanitary Authority in October, November, December to draft that ordinance, along with Mike Wiley, the attorney. It was all reviewed. We submitted that draft ordinance to the EPA on December 22nd. And on January 19th, we received favorable response without any comments, which was a pleasant surprise. So we have to the end of this month to get that resubmitted back to the EPA. And I've asked Wendy and Cheryl to be here tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scott. This is final reading. We went through this 2 weeks ago. Had a discussion about this probably, 6 or so weeks ago in Public Works. Any final comments or questions in final reading on the ordinance? Just appreciate the water authority's support and work on this. Sorry, it didn't click to me that you were here to support this from something else. So otherwise I would have knocked this out sooner, but appreciate you being here nonetheless. Thank you. Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 6, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
We will move to item 8.
Resolution acknowledging and accepting County of Lycoming contribution to Brandon Park Band Shell.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, welcome back.
Yes, good evening again, President Yoder, members of council administration. This is also another long-standing item that we've had for quite a while. And that's the Brandon Park Band Shell improvements and money related to that. The county originally committed $20,000. And now that we're moving forward with the band shell, we just wanted to make sure that the county was still on board, since it has been a number of years since we got that original grant. Predates me, and they generously said yes. So we just wanted to acknowledge. Austin thought it was appropriate to just reiterate that the funding is still in place from the county as well, given that it's been such a long time. So that's all this resolution is doing, is acknowledging and accepting the county's contribution towards the band shell.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Any comments or questions on this item? Just thank the county again for their support on this. We've got a pretty good partnership with them, including things like this, but also a lot of other things going on in the area and in the city. So just grateful for it. Absolutely.
Yep, agree.
Hearing seen none then, Mrs. Frank on item 8.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Item 9.
Resolution renewal of an antivirus software.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Black. I will welcome you to the podium, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, other members of council. What you have before you is a resolution for the renewal of the antivirus software that we currently have on our city systems. It's for a 5-year term. The cost for all the computers and the endpoints is $7,332.40. And for the servers, it's $1,453.60 for a total of $8,776. That is for the entire length of the contract of 5 years. And this will come out of my contracted services budget.
Thank you, Mr. Black. This was the final thing on the agenda tonight that went to finance. Anything to add?
No, nothing in particular. Mr. Black did say that he was not able to ascertain what we paid for this last time, but
Yeah,
but
it's not
this
in,
price compared well to the 2 other quotes that
Okay.
we received for the
Yeah.
product,
and it is by far for me the easiest solution. It's just
because it's our
copy and
existing.
paste in new license keys.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Okay, here you see none. Mrs. Frank on item 9.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris. Anybody have any conflicts or any issue if I do 10, 11, 12 together?
No.
Okay.
Welcome.
So items 10 and 10, 11, and 12 are real estate reductions. I'll take a motion in a second to open the floor for discussion for those three items.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Mackey, walk us through the three real estate reductions on the agenda.
So we have three up here right now. One is for LERTA, one is for a veterans exemption, and I'm pulling Lauzon from my head in 1 second to
I think it
review
was
that.
also a veterans one.
I
thought-
think it was interim assessment was the change on that one,
Okay.
which means that basically they finished a property and county assessment said they owe a little more.
Okay.
So with the veterans assessment, again, I think this was a half double duplex, so that they get half of the assessment based on that. The other half of the property remain taxable. We don't really get a choice on the interim assessments because the county assessment does all that. And the last one are two LERTA updates for Baltic Avenue and John Ryan. So. Has anyone got
Awesome.
any questions?
Any comments or questions on these three? Pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
If not, I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
Do you guys remember your LERTA approval last year?
Mhm.
I just wanted to make a note that we have not received any new LERTAs and the applications are still being worked on, so we can get those online. But for all businesses that are listening and doing new construction in the city, the LERTAs are still open in the city that you can get in contact with community development for that.
Here, thank you very much, Kevin. Any other final comments or questions? Okay, here you see on Mrs. Frank on the motion for items 10, 11, and 12.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motions pass 4-0. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll jump to item 17, except for filing Water and Sanitary Authority meeting minutes from January 24th, 2024. Veterans Memorial Park Commission, January 8th, 2024. Public Works meeting minutes from August and September 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 17.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Item 18, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, March 28th, 7 PM right here at Trade and Transit 2. There will, upcoming meetings. There will not be an executive session following this. Sorry. Upcoming meetings, Tuesday, March 19th, 6:30 is our hard meeting. Wednesday, March 20th at 10, blighted property. Thursday, March 21st, 10:30 zoning hearing. Tuesday, March 26th, 11:30 AM, public safety, 1 PM finance, 2:30 PM public works. Wednesday, March 27th, 9 AM, economic revitalization. Thursday, March 28th, is our next city council meeting at 7. Any comments from members of council? I'll make one really quick. Anybody that was paying attention last week, there was a interesting debate conversation at the commissioners meeting about Lycoming County and the city potentially being a sanctuary county and city. I'll applaud the commissioners for kind of putting that to bed, and I'll just reiterate what was said and what is the truth. Lycoming County is not a sanctuary county. Like our Williamsport city is not a sanctuary city. Neither body has passed any kind of legislation to the contrary. There's a language thing, I think, with the prison board as to why it was on a non-government website, but a website nonetheless. If anybody has any kind of questions, wants to understand that a little bit more, I'd refer them to last Thursday's commissioners meeting. There was a really good outline as to what happened. They're working through mediating that. There's a lot of good information there related to a lot of the rumors that were brought up. The ICE facility in the city does not house any illegal immigrants. It is administrative and processing only, I believe. Anyone that needs to be held is not held anywhere in the area, in the county. Nobody's staying in hotels. Nobody's being released anywhere. Nobody's being flown into the airport. I've had conversations with a number of people over the past few days that have verified that that is not happening. All right. So there's no basis for anything kind of floating around. And I've heard a handful of things myself in the past 24 hours at kind of growing legs. So nothing's going on. I truly believe that. Those are the facts. If anybody does have questions or concerns, reach out to the county. Reach out to the city. We'd be happy to have a conversation about what actually happened.
Mhm.
So. Any other comments?
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any comments from the administration? Mr. Nar?
The zoning hearing board was scheduled to meet on the 21st. And one of the items on the agenda was for the LGN townhomes in the Newberry. Obviously, the Common Pleas Court remanded it back to the zoning hearing board. It was scheduled for the 21st. At this point, it has been tabled and will go before April zoning hearing board, which is the third Thursday of the month.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any other comments from the administration? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the news media? All right, is there a motion and a second for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you in a couple weeks.